Hello, welcome back to Old Soul Podcast. My name is Bree, that's spelled B-R-E-I. Thank you so much. Today's movie commentary is going to be about the film Uptown Girls by the director Boaz Yakin, spelled B-O-A-Z-Y-A-K-I-N. It's either Boaz Yakin or Boaz Yakin. It was released in the year of 2003. It's rated PG-13 and it has a runtime of an hour and 32 minutes. So the story is summarized by imdb as, and I quote, "A grown-up woman who kept her childish instincts and behavior starts working as a nanny of an 8-year-old girl who actually acts like an adult." In this film, the main character, who is this adult woman that's stated in this quote, is named Marley. I think she's probably around her early 20s, early to mid 20s. And then the younger girl that she ends up becoming the nanny for is named Ray, among other things. But their real names are Brittany Murphy and Dakota Fanning. Dakota is playing Ray and Brittany Murphy is playing Molly. Okay, so the film starts on this, not a montage, but just scenes of Molly getting ready for a party. I don't know that she's supposed to know that they're throwing her a surprise party, and when I say there, it's Ingrid, her best friend, and her other friend, Huey. But she probably knows anyway. Anyway, it's her birthday, and she's going to her party, and everyone says surprise, even though I don't think Molly was really that surprised, but it happens. So, on her birthday, she is in the restroom and she sees or hears this young girl making fun of her shoes in the stall behind her, and out comes Ray sort of saying, like, I had those same similar styled shoes when I, like, 3 years ago. And she's just, being Ray, who happens to be a very rude little brat, but we'll get there. There's a lot of complex layers to that. And, Molly's kind of looking at her like, okay, little girl, don't test me. But she doesn't say that. It's just sort of on her face. And when she is about to wash her hands, she pulls out this soap, her own personal soap, by the way. This isn't just like soap that's in the restroom. She pulls out her own personal soap, and Molly kind of gives her grief about it, stating, like, you have your own soap. And then Ray goes on this whole thing about all the things you can catch and on and on and on. You find out pretty early out that Ray always has her own way of doing things. There's several scenes when she's with Molly where she has her own soap, like in this first scene where they meet each other at Molly's party. And there's another scene where they're in the kitchen washing dishes and she's trying them, but she doesn't like the towel that Molly's trying to dry them with. I think she wants to use paper towels because she thinks it's more hygienic. She does have some facts there, cool, but she's very, I don't like to use this term loosely because it's often portrayed as something that isn't as complex as some people like to use it as. But I do definitely think Ray has some qualities of OCD for sure. And Molly even like teases her a lot about her being orderly. When she sees her bedroom later on in the film, it looks like a kid's bedroom, but it's just super organized. Like nothing gets out of place. And again, Ray's 8 years old, so she can probably keep her room pretty well together if she's just like a clean kid. But like there's nothing out of place, ever. So it's a little odd. There's even scenes where, there's a scene where Ray gets a water bottle and she wipes the top of the water bottle off before she drinks the water out of it, which is also very, very compulsive. And I only say that because I do have a lot of tendencies similar to Ray watching this film. I realized that. And while I think you should look up the definition of OCD and really do maybe a deeper dive into this as an audience member, it's with Ray, I'm going to get into why I think she's the way that she is and why I think it's much more than her just being what people like to quote and coin as a clean freak. That is there's so much more layered into the concept of being OCD, but I'm going to talk about that a little later. I just wanted to note it because it is a huge part of who Ray is and who she starts to become less of by the end of the film. Okay, so back to the bathroom scene where they're meeting and they're bickering. Huey runs in. Huey is Molly's friend, who's technically the one who's throwing her the party. He's a guy. It's nice to see a black character on screen. He's funny throughout the film. He's cool. And, you know, he tells Molly as he's like grabbing Ray, and Ray's like hitting him, and she calls him Huey Gooey, like Gooey Huey, as like a rude little nickname, because of course she does. And Huey's pulling her out, and he's telling Molly, oh, this is my boss's daughter. I have to watch her. All her nannies quit like the first day, so we can't keep a nanny, so today I'm being her nanny. And Huey seems to be some sort of like talent agent, and he works for Ray's mom, who seems like she probably owns a music company. That's what they give off in little tidbits, but we're like never really at a music studio, not really enough for me to know specifically everything that they do, but I think that's the gist of the job. And Huey has even brought his own artist, or the artist he's trying to show off, to Roma, who is Ray's mother, that night to Molly's birthday. And so we're not in the restroom anymore. There's gossiping going on, drinking, the normal things that go on at a club. Ray probably shouldn't be there, but again, she's being watched. And she's making commentary left and right about everything she doesn't approve of at the party. And everyone's trying to ignore her. And then the guy, Neil, who is the one who's being sort of watched and managed by Huey, Molly falls for him right away. She thinks he's really attractive. There's even this little scene between her and Ingrid, where Ingrid's her other friend, by the way, girlfriend. Not dating, but, you know, close girlfriend. And this is something that I feel like I might be overstepping in, but maybe if you see this film, you'll get that same vibe. I feel like Ingrid is a frenemy more than she is Molly's best friend. I think throughout the film, Ingrid does these little jabs at Molly where she kind of treats her like a child, and granted, Molly does act like a child. We'll get more into that soon. But Ingrid does this thing where she nitpicks everything about Molly to the point where she kind of just wants Molly to do what she wants and bosses her around. And instead of being constructive, she's just always harping on her about the littlest things. And I think deep down, Ingrid is a little jealous of the life that Molly lives, which makes sense because she mostly lived a very easy, carefree life, which most people do not do. I just feel like she is jealous of Molly, and they even have a fight at some point in the film. She does a lot for Molly, but I don't particularly like Ingrid. I just have to note that, and it's because she seems more like a frenemy, and I think you'll understand if you watch the film, but just the small things that she does and says that really make me wonder about her character. And I think a lot of things that she does for Molly are so that she can tell Molly every chance she gets what she's done for Molly, not because she genuinely cares and wants to help her friend. And that's irritating, to say the least, because it seems like Molly really does like Ingrid. Okay. So she somehow manages to get Neil, who says he's like an abstinent musician, to her apartment. And actually, no, I know how she gets him there. I think she like brags about the fact that her father, who has died at this point, was like a famous musician as well, and she has like his whole collection at her apartment, her really nice big fancy apartment. And Neil ends up going to her apartment and he sees it, and obviously she's not lying, so he's pretty shocked, and it's pretty cool. Anyway, long story short, they end up having sex or whatever, and there's this whole like time lapse, I guess, where Molly's kind of keeping Neil hostage in her apartment. And as she's doing that, she's noticing like the lights aren't turning on, and just small little things that should be working that aren't working. They eat a bunch of junk food. they are in their pajamas all day. It's pretty much the gist of it. They're just chilling at her house forever. Eventually, Neil says that, like, he's got to go. Like, he has to be a real human being and exist in the world or whatever. And this is when I spot some negative qualities about Molly. Not only is she childish at an age where she should most definitely be an adult, but she has attachment issues for sure. Like, I'm no therapist or anything, but she definitely has issues. At this point in life, she has been left a lot of money from her father. Both her mom and dad died in some accident when she was young, and they left her a ton of money. And so she would hand her money over to her accountant or whoever was managing her money, and they would pay all her bills and everything, and then she'd have whatever else she wanted to spend on whatever she wanted. So I think a part of the reason why she is the way that she is when she likes to shop all the time is that she just maybe likes fashion and stuff, but she has never really had to think about any of those material things in a way that's super serious because she's always had an excess of money flowing in. And so she shops a lot and buys things and doesn't think about it. She even has a pet pig, which isn't something you really see a lot of people having. And if she did have an animal, that's not strange, but I mean, maybe that pet was more expensive at the time. I don't know. It's just another thing that's like different about her. And then she also, how do I explain this? Her attachment to Neil is weird to me because she doesn't really know him, and she literally like holds him hostage in her home. Like, she doesn't want to let him leave until he forcefully like leaves. I think Neil is weird in that he says one thing but does another. He very much uses Molly throughout the film as his quote-unquote muse for his music, but never gives her any credit, and he always blames her for being the reason why they don't get along. And then Molly wants to hold on to him, maybe for the fear of losing anything close to her, like she did her parents, but also she's trying to fill whatever void she has going on. Instead of going to therapy or just being honest, she just buys things and she doesn't want to let things go, even if they're strangers. It's so weird, her attachment to like material things and to things that she doesn't even really understand or really seem to want to give the time to get to know. It's a thing. It's weird. And then I do want to state that not only is her behavior very childlike, not that being an adult you have to be a certain way, but there's a certain sense of responsibility in a way that you hold yourself as an adult that Molly doesn't. And it starts to affect her negatively when she finds out that that guy who's sort of her accountant and who manages her money was scamming her, and he scammed a ton of his other clients, and he's taken all of her money. So now she like literally has no money left. And that's why when she was, trying to turn the lights on or the water on, it wasn't turning on because the bill hadn't gotten paid. And obviously she never had to check on these things because she had someone else doing it for her, and he ended up taking all her money. So she doesn't get a reality check in that she realizes that she has to grow up. It hits her in the ass, pretty much. And she has to move out of her really fancy, apartment, and she has to sell her things, and she ends up, moving in with Ingrid. And there's a time where Ingrid tried to get her a job at this like really nice fancy shopping center or store, probably meant for people in upper class living. Work out because Molly's like late to her shift, or maybe she shows up to her shift but she was like sleeping in the department store. It's something weird, I can't remember, but she does something really stupid and then it ruins the job for her, period. But she does end up buying these satin, whatever sheets, Egyptian cotton, that's what it is. And she's raving about, and that comes into play into the story later because Neil like does a whole song about Egyptian cotton sheets, which becomes a huge hit for him in his like debut song, and she gives them to him. Again, her being sort of his muse, but him not really ever giving her any real credit until he needs her, which is, I don't really like Neil either. And again, Ingrid lets her into her house, but she has a whole set of rules and blah, 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 blah. She's really mad at her about the fact that she lost the job that Ingrid tried to get her before she even started. So that's what's going on with Molly. And Molly and Ray, who I'm about to talk about soon, Ray, is that the thing that's weird about them is that they are reflections of one another in a lot of ways. Like, if you could take half of Ray and half of Molly and sort of intertwine them, they would be probably just enough of an adult and just enough of like a kid that it would work. But of course, that's what makes the film really entertaining, is that they're polar opposites. And not just that they're polar opposites, it's that they're polar opposites at totally different points in their life where they should be switched. There's this like mirror effect with them that's really interesting to watch. And when I talk about the mirror effect, I don't know if this is intentional by the director, but that first scene when Molly meets Ray at her birthday, sort of foreshadowing the thing about the nanny, they are in a restroom where there's like all these mirrors on the wall, just like there would be, because you look in the mirror to do your makeup or to wash your hands or whatever. And when they cut from Molly and Ray to Huey coming in yelling and looking for Ray, you see Molly's reflection in like two distant mirrors when they make that cut, and then they cut back and you see them looking. You see Molly and then the mirror and then Ray, and you're just looking at. It's really interesting that they got that cut without any cameras getting into the mirror and ruining the shot, and I just wondered how they did that. It just looked really cool. Okay, so fast forward to Molly meeting Ray again, and this happens because I think Huey probably gets her this gig, most likely. She becomes Ray's nanny, and so this is technically the second time that they're meeting in person, and they meet at Ray's school, where she's wearing like her little school uniform, and Molly goes to pick her up, and you see this really, really cool shot again within the scene that I really like, another reflection of Molly, but it's inside of Ray's little sunglasses, and so you can see Ray watching Molly like walking up to her, and you can tell she's probably a little pissed off, as she always is, and you see Molly's reflection enter closer as she gets closer and closer to Ray in that shot. And I think it's really crisp and really cool, and maybe it's not even that technical, but it looks great on screen. And so, yeah, another moment of the sort of mirrored effect for these two characters when they're in the same scenes and shots together. This happens again when Molly shows Ray her dad's guitar collection that she's really attached to specifically for her dad. That's probably the only time she's attached to something that has some other reason behind, besides the heightened emotions she gets from spending money. And there's another reflection when, I think it's a picture of Molly's parents or some picture, and then Ray walks into frame and she's also reflected in the frame of that picture. It's interesting. All those mirrored effects. So when Ray and Molly meet a second time, Ray is not happy at all, because she already knows Molly's personality and she knows they're not going to get along. Molly's in like this overall dress sort of thing that looks really cool, and Ray's just kind of like, what is wrong with this lady? And this is her first day being her nanny, and she introduces herself, but Ray already knows who she is, so it's not really necessary. And again, I think Huey got her this job because she didn't last the other job, and this is all she has. So they go back to Ray's house, and Ray has her whole routine when she takes her medicine, which is why they bought that water bottle that I talked about earlier, and Ray like wipes off the rim of it. And she has like a schedule before she eats dinner. And the whole time they're just going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And the dialogue is really good and funny. Dakota Fanning delivers really well for her age. She's actually very young in this role. And although I think it's cool to see like child actors doing a good job and getting, that acclaim that they deserve, I have some issues with children being child actors, because how much can they really say, like, I want to do this role? Even if they do say, like, mommy, I like acting, you know, it's controversial, especially with a lot of, like, Disney stars growing up to say how much they really hated their lives when they were kids. And I don't think that's necessarily the case for everyone, especially not for the Fannings. Her and her sister are both very, very good actors, and they were acting since they were kids. I just always wonder, like, oh, this kid did a really good job. I wonder if they really liked being on set or not, you know? Maybe that has nothing to do with the story, but, I mean, she's very young, so she does very well. I was just wondering if she enjoyed being there. And then, followed by Brittany Murphy. Their chemistry on screen is really good. So, they're bickering, and at some point, I kind of think Ray's playing with Molly, like, testing her, trying to get her to quit or whatever, and she has this whole spiel about how, you know, if she wants to get rid of Molly, she can, because, you know, nothing gets around her. And you kind of see that Ray is a kid who has everything laid out for her, but she also has no control at all. Like, she's really quick to talk about, like, how much better she is than everyone else and how stupid everyone else is, and always angry, especially for a child. That's kind of odd. And her room's orderly, and she has everything she could possibly want. She's in ballet, and she really likes ballet. For the technical aspects, there's a scene where Molly picks her up from ballet practice, and before they leave, their teacher's like, okay, everyone can just do like a freestyle dance right now, and Ray just kind of leaves, and Molly's like, why are you leaving? Like, Ray doesn't even want to do like a freestyle. She's just, that's too wild. And everything has a time and an order and so on and so forth. And I think the issue with Ray, as it's close to the idea that she has OCD, is that everything around her has a place. She feels like she has control because she has money, and she can look a certain way, and her mom pretty much gives her whatever she wants, but she doesn't really have control. She's a kid. Like, there's only so much a kid can do for themselves, and everything she has is because of her mother, which makes sense because she's like 8 years old. But there's this plot point in the film that doesn't necessarily come up during this time when she's meeting Molly for the second time, but since it's, you know, I'm doing sort of a summary over this commentary of what's happening. But her father is in this coma, and she acts like she doesn't care at first, like she really shrugs it off. He's a vegetable now, which I'll quote this later specifically word for word toward the end of this episode when I just am going over those details, but she talks about him in such a distant way, and Molly notices it. And I think the reason why Ray is the way that she is because she has no real control, but she likes to feel like she has control, and being extra clean and extra orderly and having her environment feel like everything is in its rightful place gives her the sort of impression that she has the control that she really doesn't have over the life of her father, who's slipping every single day in that coma that he's been in for God knows how long. And he's not even responsive, so she can't really have a full-on back-to-back conversation with her father. And she doesn't even, like, go into the room at that point to see her father ever. So, yeah, I think that's a lot of the reason why she is the way that she is. And that's why I think there's a lot of depth within these characters, and I talked about how they are much more complex than they might seem on surface. With all the jokes aside, it's a real thing. So, anyway, long story short, Molly quits, and Ray doesn't care, and then Molly goes home and realizes she can't quit. She really needs money. So she ends up going back to work for Ray, and Ray sort of accepts her slowly but surely and says, okay, I'll give you, you know, like a second chance. They start to hit it off at that point. Molly has this big argument with Ingrid. She also has some arguments with Neil. Her and Ingrid stop being friends because Ingrid literally just wants Molly to do everything that she wants her to do. There's some points where Molly sells some of her clothes to try to make some money. I think she pretty much sells everything, even auctions off her dad's guitars, and someone buys like the whole collection for a large amount of money. Like I said, that was hard for her because that's the one attachment she had with like a story behind it, and not so much just because she liked it, which isn't necessarily bad, but she just, likes to spend money a lot. And then what else? She fights with Neil because she feels like Neil never owns up to anything or takes any accountability. I feel like they're not good for each other, but, I think there's really nothing else to say about their relationship. I feel like it's one of those relationships that's just thrown in there. I don't really like Neil, and I don't like Molly. I don't like who Molly is when she's with Neil, so I just think they don't need to be together, and that's whatever. And Neil gets, like I said before, he gets this huge hit song, Egyptian Cotton, something that he titles it as, and that becomes popular. And his jacket that Molly ruined, I can't remember how she ruined it, but she ends up fixing it, and then like it's all trendy now and everyone like loves his jacket, and he doesn't give her any credit and she's pissed about it. And then what happens then? She moves in with Huey, who was probably the better fit anyway. Her and Huey have a really loving and cute relationship, and she's getting along with Ray. They still bicker, but they have intense conversations at this point, and they care for each other. She even gives Ray her little pet pig, her teacup pig. At first, Ray thinks it's gross, but she opens up to it. So you can see Ray opening up a lot more and Molly being a lot more responsible, and they have like a deep connection there. Obviously, sort of like a nanny and a babysitter, a mentor and a mentee connection, and it's really cute. Molly at some point takes Ray to the teacups. It's an amusement park ride where there's like these giant teacups on sort of like a carousel, and you can spin yourself. I think a lot of people have seen that as a kid or have been on something similar to it. And she brags about it, and they go all the way there. They take like a train there. It looks like it might be on the Jersey side, and it seems like they might be currently living somewhere in New York. And then they go there, but it's not in season yet, so it hasn't opened up. There's like a week left, which Molly totally should have checked because she definitely discourages Ray, and she does this a few times. That makes me really mad, where she gets Ray's hopes up and then she can't deliver. It's like making an empty promise. Is already really irritating, but when you do that to a kid, it's even more frustrating to see that little gleam leave their eyes. So she gets Ray to eat like a hot dog, which is like, whoa, not something Ray would ever do. So that's cute, but Ray's disappointed, and I think they go in and they just kind of sit on it, but they can't actually do anything on it. And this will come to play again because Ray does go back to the teacups. There's a point where Ray's dad does end up dying, and Molly gets fired. And that's because, again, she makes an empty promise to Ray about, if you read to your dad, it might help out, you never know. Which, true, like, she was trying to get Ray to go in and spend time with her father, speaking to him, stop being so distant, stop being so scared. And Ray does listen to Molly, and she does seem to enjoy having more time with her dad, but then her dad dies, and I think Ray gets the impression, because she's a child, that if she reads to her dad or she talks to her dad, then her dad will no longer be the vegetable that he is, which is just which she actually calls her own father. It's not, I'm not trying to be insensitive, but that's literally what she says. And he's in a coma. And then he ends up dying, and Ray runs away, which is terrible. At some point, Molly gets fired, and her and Roma have like this whole conversation before then. I don't really remember the specifics of why she leaves or quits, because I feel like it happens like once before when they just bicker. But Molly does tell Roma, like, you need to be a better mother, you're not really there for her, so on and so forth. Ray needs you, which is true. It's true. So it is what it is. Just because you're I feel like a lot of the time parents don't want to hear that they're not being a good parent, because they feel like because they're trying really hard that means that they're being a good parent. And I feel like, obviously, I'm not a parent, so there's only so much I can say about this, but just because someone's not a parent doesn't mean that they can't recognize that you're doing something that is considered bad parenting. And I feel like the best way to fix that is just to be able to reflect on that and try your best again, because you're raising a human who is out of control, which Ray was very much out of control, okay? And Molly sort of grounded her again. And I also think Molly is telling her this in the way that, you know, how she felt not having either one of her parents, and giving her sort of this, please be there for Ray, sort of like, because I didn't have anybody when I was a kid, and I need you to know that this is what's happening. Anyway, she gets fired. She ends up moving out of Huey's apartment, getting her own really small, sort of rinkety-dinkety apartment, but probably the best she could do with what she was making in New York. And then, like I said, that whole thing where Ray's dad actually dies and Ray runs away, no one can find her, everyone's worried. Roma even calls Molly because she's wondering if Molly might know where Ray is, and Molly's like, no, I have no idea. So she rushes out of her new apartment and that she was showing Huey, and she goes and she has an idea of where Ray might be, but I guess she didn't think that when she was on the phone with Roma. But she runs to the amusement park where the teacups are. I'm assuming it's because she assumed that that's where Ray could be, and she's right. And that's where she finds Ray again at the teacups, but this time the teacups are on. And the amusement park is open. And she finds her. She doesn't say anything. Neither one of them do. She just gets to the teacups with Ray, and they start spinning. And this is actually my favorite scene in the entire movie. They're on the teacups. They're mirroring each other. They're sitting across from each other. At this point, they've really grown as characters within the story. They're forcefully, aggressively turning the teacup as the actual, ride is turning on its own outside of the teacup steering wheel. And they're just kind of looking at each other and then looking down at the wheel, and the camera's going up and over them, and it's dramatic, and the music's really dramatic, but it's great, and I love it. After that little snippet, we go to Ray throwing up in the trash can, probably from all the swirling. Who knows how long Ray's been there. And she turns over at Molly, clearly not handling the fact that her dad died very well, as she's punching Molly, and Molly kind of slaps her in the face, and Ray looks shocked, like, how dare she, because no one ever tests Ray. Granted, she's a kid, she probably should not have slapped Ray, but anyway, Ray starts punching her in the stomach with her little small fist, and then she hugs her, and then Molly hugs her back. This was just like a point of grief, I'm sure, like one of those first stages of grief, and being sort of upset with Molly about the fact that her dad died, and she thought that reading to him and stuff was gonna maybe save him, and it didn't. It's sad, it happened, then we move on. At some point we get to the end of the film, and Molly gets like these offers from people who recognize Neil's jacket, and they hear or overhear a conversation that she's the one who made them, and so she's starting to get more inquiries about doing jackets and like pants and stuff for them. And at first she's kind of like, nah, I kind of just, it's not anything serious. And then after a few minutes, more people are asking her, she's like, okay, well, maybe I'll think about it. And she isn't nannying Ray, I don't think, anymore, because there's this scene where she meets up with this like probably advisor, administrator at this fashion school, and she's going to start trying to go there and learn more about fashion, which is something that she really enjoys. There's a lot of really cool pieces that she wears in the film that look cool, so it makes sense. And then there's a scene of her the final scene of her going to Ray's recital, and she feels bad because she's late. And Roma's actually behind the scenes with Ray in the wings, you know, fixing her little tutu. This is her ballet recital. And the tutu's really glittery and like not like Ray at all. And Roma is actually there in person. She's not just saying she's going to show up and not showing up, and Ray's not looking in the audience for her. So there's growth with her own relationship with her mother. And so they end up having this whole dance to this song called Molly Smiles, which was originally written by her dad for her, and Neil's the one singing it. And they also bring out all her guitars because they're the ones who bought the guitars for her, which is really cute and super sad to see. Like, it's like cute and sad. And then not only is Ray and all the other girls dancing, but Ray has like a solo, and instead of doing like the very technical aspects of ballet, she does like a little freestyle, which again shows the character development and growth of this character. And you see Molly in the audience just being super happy about all of it. Yeah, so let me go ahead and talk about, well, read back some quotes that I really enjoyed. I do want to say another thing about Neil, even though, like I said, I just ultimately think they weren't a good fit for each other, and that's just kind of like adult relationships in general. There is a scene where Neil is at Roma's house and Molly shows up, you know, for one of her shifts to watch Ray. So Neil was sleeping with Roma, who's like the head of the company or whatever. So again, you kind of think Neil's kind of a piece of shit because he kind of says like, oh, I'm abstinent, which isn't true. And then like, he'll do anything to like get his like dream made happened. Which whatever, he's an adult, but he just seems to say a lot of things and not really deliver later. It doesn't really say what happens with Molly and her relationship with Neil, but I hope it doesn't do anything past him singing that song, which by the way, the song's really, really catchy. So maybe I'll add a snippet in here if I can. So there's like a few scenes that I'm going to read back between Ray and Molly that I really liked because I liked them, and I feel like there's just enough of dark humor in the film and serious undertones that make this film a good balance, and is the overall reason why I'm even doing a commentary over it, because I feel like it's good overall and it has all the elements that you would need in a movie. And I also think it's not one of those films that's ever going to be able to be recreated. It's just not. So here's a snippet. Ray, are you still moping over that disgusting guy? Other people always let you down. Why don't you forget them and do something for yourself? Molly, like what? Ray, I don't know. Something you're good at, and I don't mean shopping. Molly, maybe some of us aren't good at anything. Ray, every grown-up is good at something. Oh, my bad. I don't see any grown-ups around here. Molly, what's so great about being a grown-up anyway? So I can turn out like you? Ray, you're scared. Here's another separate scene between Molly and Ray. Molly, that man in the library in your house. Nurse said he's in a coma from a massive stroke. That's your father, huh? Ray, was. He's a vegetable now. Soon he'll be nothing. Molly, that's kind of harsh. Ray, it's a harsh world. And then another line, actually the very last line of the film that's really good. And this is Ray saying this. Every story has an end, but in life, every ending is just a new beginning. Well, I hope you go watch Uptown Girls, and I hope you have a good day. Bye.
Stuff is worth a bundle.
I can't just sell it, Ray. It's my parents' stuff.
No, you're gonna box it all up so it can lay in storage gathering dust. God.